Welcome, everyone, to the Too Real podcast here on Valentine's Day. Not Valentine's Day, because that is apparently a huge ick
Yes,
to Jillian.
he literally, as we were getting started, he was like,
I just slurred. I didn't really
he
say
said Valentine's with an M.
Oh, God.
There is an N there.
Valentine's
And I was
Day.
like, ugh, unattracted on Valentine's Day.
That's how we do. In the Rosado
But we are
household.
here. And yes, it is Valentine's Day. We are not huge Valentine's Day people.
Not really. No.
Although our friend Kim reminded us, she was like, I remember during COVID, you guys did like a little thing where you went in Target and you had to buy certain things. And I'm like, that's because we were bored and it was COVID and there was nothing else.
But explain that better.
But we made it fun. It was like something I need, something I want.
You gave me a list.
Yeah.
We both took a list, and on the list,
and there was a
something you
limit
need.
on what you could buy.
Yeah, something you need, something you want.
And you were buying for the other person.
You're
It's
buying.
on my TikTok somewhere.
Yeah.
But we had fun with it.
Yeah, it was
But
fun.
typically, like, I think this year's like the first year we really like did gifts per se. Usually get me like candy or something. I typically don't get you anything. Gifts aren't like really my love language.
Me either.
I like giving gifts sometimes. Like I think for me, a gift has to be like, it's like, oh, I saw this and I thought of that person. But when there's a pressure of getting someone a gift, I have a really hard time with it.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, give me a gift card.
Yeah.
I love a gift card.
Yeah. I like what you got me. She got me these like little rocks, right?
Yeah, it's like they're just reusable, like whiskey rocks, they call them.
Yeah.
I found them at Crate and Barrel, but it's like essentially an ice cube. You put it in the freezer and you put it in your drink and it doesn't dilute the old fashioned, which Mike's on an old fashioned kick lately. But
hold on, if somebody takes that clip, it's like I might have one once a month at best.
If we go out to dinner and you're having a drink, you'll usually go for an
like
old
this
fashioned.
dude's knocking back old fashions 3 times a day.
Whatever. But yeah, so you can reuse them, and it doesn't dilute the drink. So I thought it was neat. I saw it like on like some newsletter I get. It was like gift ideas, and I was like, I'll do that. So yeah, but I'm always game for candy.
That's what I got you.
Which is like it's a struggle because I'm like, I love candy. Huge, like I have big issues when it comes to like sour watermelons or peanut butter cups. It's like a fun fact about me. But then I get them and I'm like, oh, I really don't need these. I can't wait to eat them, but I really don't need these.
I got you. It's like the other stuff other than the candy.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
It was
but...
half funny, half serious. So a friend of mine was talking to me about a book that he read that helped him love his wife better, and it was basically like the 6 tips on how to love someone with ADHD. So I got her that book.
So he gave me work.
I did give you work.
Valentine's Day.
But maybe you'll read it one day and you'll be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I could love Mike better.
But it's like, okay, let's love me where I'm at rather than working on to be better.
Right.
Just throw it.
Go ahead, tell him the other gift. We're not going to show it, but tell him the other gift.
I didn't want to. I was just going to leave it at the candy, but you're just throwing yourself out there.
Go for it.
He's like,
I was
do
trying
not
to be cute.
Post this on social media.
Yeah.
So I think I shared this last week. We've been watching the OC.
You've been watching the OC.
And you're just coming along for the ride.
I've been forced.
And in the show,
there's some young people watching. They have no idea.
Well, just Google
what the
it.
OC
it was
is.
The OC. It was a teen drama, comedy, rom-com, whatever you want to call it, in the early 2000s, 2003 to 2007. And it was gold for the first 2 seasons. But in the second season, they're making this comic book. And the character Seth draws Little Miss Vixen, which is Summer, and it's like based off of her. And
his at the time it was his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. So, and whatever, but I don't want to give away the show too much. But as I'm watching it, I was like, oh, you never draw me into a cartoon character. Da, 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 da.
Because I used to draw a lot.
But like, I was joking. And it's just funny, marriage, like your husband will pay attention to like that, but then miss like the 5 other things you say. So
hence the other book, How to Love a Person with ADHD.
So he drew a cartoon picture of me
A comic book
a comic book
superhero.
superhero version of me, which I was like, why do I look 67 in this
Oh my
picture?
God.
But it was cute. But I was just like, I don't know what I'm
I've
looking
been
at
out of the
right
game.
now.
I've been out of the game.
I was fine with just the candy.
I know, but
And then
I
he
was
got me
trying to
this
be
like
creative.
ridiculous card that I was like, oh, this is
The
just
car was just straight funny.
the card was ridiculous. I opened it. I was like, really? And that's the hard thing. I'm opening this in front of him and I don't want to break his heart. I appreciate the thought and everything, but I was like, what are we doing? Like, I love you though, Boo.
Yeah.
And this is why we don't do Valentine's
This
Day.
is why we don't do
We just show love throughout the
The
year.
drawing wasn't horrible. It just wasn't.
It just looked nothing like me.
Well, it kind of did.
Uh,
That's why I put the picture next to it. My inspo.
it looks nothing like the picture.
It was a superhero. Anyway, I'm out of practice.
Sorry.
If I was still going to be a cartoonist, I think I would have killed that experiment. Anyway, happy Valentine's Day.
I'm crying.
All right.
If you're watching the video version of this, like literal tears right
Yeah,
now.
I'm gonna go home and burn the picture.
When I was done opening it, I put everything back in the bag and I was like, thank you. This was wonderful. And I just like put it away. Oh boy.
All right.
Okay.
So for today's episode, I was inspired by today's festivities. But also thinking about, we're not big Valentine's people.
Tines.
That's what
It's
I said.
an N.
Tines. Check the tape. I said Tines. We're not big into this holiday. And even more so probably when we were single. We weren't anywhere near interested in this.
I used to buy myself chocolate covered strawberries on Valentine's Day.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big fan.
I should just hit the gym really hard.
I did that too.
Maybe I should still do that.
Mm.
But what I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of go back, have a real moment and say, if we could right now jump in the DeLorean, go back in time and talk to ourselves when we were single, what advice would you give yourself during your single years?
I mean, we only have about 30 minutes. We're probably down to about 22 right now. I could go on forever. Little background. If you have never listened to our Blended Families podcast episode, it was probably like our third episode or something like that. Highly recommend going back and listening to that to get some context. But this is our second marriage. And I was single for about 7 years between divorcing and meeting Mike. And I did all the things wrong. And I mean, this could even go back prior to when I was married the first time, like just my dating history in total. There are many things that I could say, but I tried to narrow it down to 3. And the first one is to work on yourself. I have found that when I am like not doing well personally in life or spiritually, mentally, whatever, those have been like my worst relationships. Yeah. Because you are more willing to take on things that are just not good for you. So when I felt like my life really started to turn was when I was hitting the gym consistently. I was eating well. I was reading. I was working on my spirituality. Like I was working on myself because there would be so many times that I would be like, do I have a sign on my forehead that says like, pick me, I'm an idiot. You know what I mean? But it's like, I feel like when you're doing well in life, when you're taking care of yourself, like people see that. Yeah. And the reverse of that is when people know that you're a hot mess, that's like they're pouncing on that because they're like, let's see what I can get away with this chick, you know? Right. So for me, that was huge when I really started to work on myself, to think higher of myself, like work on your self-esteem, like raise your standards, all of those things. Like people see that and you're going to attract the right type of person. Yeah.
I think two halves don't make a whole in the formula of any type of relationship. And what I mean by that is like the whole Jerry Maguire thing, you complete me kind of stuff just never works. No. And so like when you're not whole, when you're not together, you don't know who you are, and you're looking for somebody else to help define you, or shape you up, or whatever. Somebody to come and rescue you and fix you and save you from yourself. Like, I think first and foremost, other than Jesus, you have to be your first hero.
Yeah.
And get your stuff together, because two halves don't make a whole.
Yeah.
At all. Why do you think, though, staying in that, why do you think some people that when they're both hot mess, they get together? What is it about, like, people like that finding each other?
I think similar energies attract. For sure. Yeah, I would say that. Like, I see women that I know that they're just like, they feel like that man's going to complete them. They feel like that's going to make everything better, and it never works out that way. And I'm like, girl, work on you.
Yeah.
Like, don't be in a rush. Like, you're going to find the right person. But you have to be right first.
Right.
Because if you find it, say you meet a guy that's awesome, but you're a hot mess, you're bringing all that into the relationship, and you're expecting him to fix you. And what's going to happen is he's either going to end up resenting you, or he's going to be like, I want nothing to do with this, and run away from that.
Yeah.
But you have these like toxic men that they see that a girl's a hot mess, and they're like, oh, I can get what I want out of her, and I can do whatever I want outside of that too, because she's such a hot mess, she won't care.
Yeah.
She's so desperate for attention that she'll take whatever I give her,
Right.
and she'll put up with the nonsense.
Right.
And I've been in those situations, and it's not like, you're worth more than that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it, and for me personally, throughout my life, a lot of worth issues. And then because I didn't think so much of myself, I would do things that resulted in carrying a lot of shame afterwards. And it's just a cycle that repeats itself and repeats itself. And at some point you have to put your foot down, break the cycle, but then also work on healing that shame part, because that's going to follow you everywhere. And it's something that I struggle with every day. And I've been really intentionally trying to work on that lately.
Yeah.
But I see it happening, and I just want to shake them and be like, no, like, you're worth more than this. Like, have a higher standard for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Piggyback on that, I think the one advice I would give, the first advice I would give myself is this. I'd be like, yo, Mike, life is short, but you don't need a rush. Life is short, but you don't need a rush.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I was in competition. I was in this race with time that actually robbed me of my time. Like we think because life is short, you have to rush, but rushing makes it actually shorter.
Yeah.
Because you make more mistakes. You don't know how to enjoy the moment. And I just I wanted to be married. I wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to buy a house. And I just rushed into so many things. And I did those things, but because I rushed, I wasn't in a healthy state of mind to even enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right. I rushed into marriage. I didn't really consider things. And it was just like my scoreboard was jacked up. I was trying to beat some type of world record in timing rather than growing naturally, developing in a healthy way, and enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
So if I could go back and be like, yo, first I would smack me in the face and just be like, I get it. Life is short. Stop rushing, dude.
Yeah.
It's not that serious.
You know, it's funny. You say that, but we got married very quickly too.
For sure. And on that note, what's your next advice?
Just a little reminder there.
We did, but it was later on.
Yeah, we had been
mature,
through some
we knew,
stuff.
we
at
developed.
That point.
Yeah. I heard a comedian say that dating in your 40s is like buying sneakers at Ross. He's like, you could find if you find a dope one, it's probably size 17. And if to find one your size and that fits you, you're going to have to settle.
Wow. So
Which
you're
is
saying
horrible.
you settled
No,
with
I'm
me?
not saying we weren't in our 40s.
You're doing
number
great
one.
on Valentine's Day.
I just thought it was a comedian. I said it was a comedian.
Yes, it is funny.
It is a funny, little analogy.
Yes.
But I still think that we didn't settle, but I think we're at a place where we weren't necessarily. I wasn't rushing to get married. We interviewed the crap out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't interview. We interrogated each other.
Yeah.
And we went through enough stuff that we matured.
Yeah.
Right. I'm rushing to get to plateaus, to get to a platform and a status that I wasn't ready for. I wasn't mature for it.
Yeah.
And I think when you get a blessing that doesn't fit your level of maturity, it becomes a curse.
That's good. That's really good. I dig that.
You dig it?
Yeah.
What's your next advice to yourself?
My next advice is to trust your gut. Because I think back to one relationship that I was in, and I just always had this feeling that this dude was like doing stuff behind my back, because he would like disappear, or like he would always be like a quick texter, and then there would be like 8 to 9 hours where there would be no response, and like the stories weren't lining up from time to time, and I'm just like, is this guy like? And here's the other side to that. I knew going into it that he was not a good guy. I had friends that dated him. He was not a good guy, and everyone said, Jill, he's not a good guy, and I'm like, no, it's different.
Yeah, of course.
It's different.
I'll fix him.
Yeah, which I knew in my gut he was a jerk, but I kept on, like, I would make excuses in my head. Oh, well, he's probably this. Oh, well, but in my gut, I'm like, something ain't right. And I let it go on for a while, and it would be very, there would be times where I'd be like, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Like, you're a jerk. I want nothing to do with you. And then he would text me in the middle of the night, a couple days later, and I would fall back into it. Yeah. But every time I knew in my gut, like, this is not a relationship. This is not a good person. But I think, and going back to my first point, I didn't think enough of myself that I was willing to ignore my gut because I felt like, oh, but this could be something, da da da. Yeah. And it was just like, trust your gut. Like, you know when something's off. And even, and I've shared this before, when I was with Hunter's father, like, we started dating, and then he asked me to move in with him, and then we were living together, and it was like, oh, well, I guess we should get engaged. Well, I guess we should get married. Well, I guess this, I guess that. But there was always like this thing in my gut, like, but you don't have to. Like, you don't have to keep moving along with what people think you're supposed to do. Yeah. Like, trust your gut. And granted, there's going to be times that your gut's wrong. But I think you know inside of you when something's not right. And trust that. You know what I mean?
I might catch you off guard with this question, but what is the difference between your impulse and your gut? Because sometimes, like it's not my gut that's telling me I shouldn't go into this relationship or should go into this relationship. It's more my impulse. Like it's my buddy Carl, who runs an addiction recovery program. He calls it's your lizard brain. It's like, you know, you're just going sheerly on impulse. Like,
yeah.
What would be the difference between that gut versus, you know?
I think with maturity, it's easier to distinguish between the two. Because with immaturity, that impulse, it's like that now, it's that immediacy. Yeah. Whereas your gut, like, you can stop and ask questions. You know what I mean? And if you're still getting that same sense. Yeah. But like with your impulse, you're like, yeah, I should do this now. And then if you were to pause and wait a few minutes, you might change your mind. Right. You know what I mean?
Right. So that's your gut sticks
off the
with
cuff.
You.
That's what.
Yeah, your gut sticks with you.
Yes.
Your impulse, it's just for a moment.
Yeah.
It's fleeting.
Yeah.
At best.
Because going back to that relationship I spoke of, like, every single time I got back with this person, or every single time something seemed off, every single time my gut was like, I don't know. Yeah. I would impulsively get back with him, and then like a day later be like, should I be doing this? Yeah. Like, should I be wasting my time with this person? Yeah. But I just kept on ignoring that because I wasn't trusting my gut in this moment, even though my gut was screaming at me every single day, like, run. But, and it didn't work out well at all. And I learned my lesson. Um, but yeah, I wish I would have trusted my gut, because I think I dated this person on and off for about a year.
Mm,
And I'm like, why am I wasting my time with this person?
right.
Like, and it affected me. I lost like a ton of weight when I was dating this person, because I was always so stressed out that he was doing something else.
Mm,
Or is he really where he says he is?
yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, it just, it if a relationship is like affecting you like that so much, like there's something wrong.
Right.
Like a good healthy relationship shouldn't have. I was dealing with insomnia. Like I wasn't sleeping because I was constantly thinking, what is he doing?
Yeah.
Is that where he really, you know what I mean? Like, so if you're not sleeping, if you're losing dramatic amounts of weight, if you're stressed out all the time, if your friends are like, yo, I don't really think this is good for you, maybe that's a hint like
Pull over.
something's off,
Yeah.
you know?
Pull over.
But
Stop
you live and
driving.
you learn, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Another thing I would tell little Mike, and I don't think we even need to talk too much about this one, but I'm just gonna drop this bomb, and I wish I knew this earlier. What's that song that goes, "I wish that I knew what I
Yeah.
know now." Pleasure is overrated. I'd rather be fulfilled.
I'm going to need you to unpack that.
Pleasure is overrated. I'd rather be fulfilled.
Mhm.
So there were times where, on top of me rushing, I was just chasing pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is like not even like single between marriage, Mike, but this is like even before marriage in general, Mike,
Mm-hmm.
where you would chase pleasures and you would chase the moment. It's all about instant gratification, right?
Yeah.
And I would just I would tell myself, not remind myself. I remind myself now, but I would introduce myself to the concept of like, yo, dude, pleasure is overrated.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you chasing after it and it's never enough. You're always going to be insatiable.
Yeah.
You rather be fulfilled.
Yeah.
You rather live out of purpose, not pleasure.
Yeah.
And I would just constantly tell myself, yo, eating that cheesesteak, it's pleasureful, but pleasure's overrated. It's not going to get you to really where you want to go.
Yeah.
And we think we chase pleasure and eventually we'll find where we want to go.
Yeah.
But I'd rather chase purpose. I'd rather chase fulfillment. I'd rather be fulfilled
Yeah.
than feel that moment of pleasure. So that would, for those of us, who used to have meaningless hookups and those kind of things, like I'd rather lived in a fulfilled relationship than to chase pleasure.
Yeah.
I think pleasure's overrated. The
Yeah.
older I get, pleasure's overrated.
Yeah.
I trade all the pleasures in the world to live out my purpose and be fulfilled.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. My last one is don't settle.
Mm.
And we've talked about this before. I remember so many times that we would be out and I would see a guy and I'd be like, oh, he's cute, And I hope this doesn't like bother you hearing this, because that was on the past. But like, then it would be, oh, well, I was going to talk to her, but she's really intimidating. So then I would make myself small. Because I'd be like, oh, well, if I'm not so intimidating, maybe that guy will find me. Well, like, will approach me then, instead of changing who I am just to like get like to fit whatever mold that person wanted.
Yeah.
And like, don't ever do that, and don't ever settle, because once I did stop settling because as a single mom, it's hard. Like, you're dating guys that don't have kids, and your kid is an inconvenience to them. So you have, well, we can do it this night, and it's not worth it. Like, your kid is a part of your life. Don't adjust who you are and what you do for some guy. Like, when I met Mike, like, he talks about us interrogating each other. I told him everything about myself. Like, I did not mince any words. I did not make myself small. I did not hide things to make him like me more. I guess that comes with the maturity of, like, I was 35 at the time. I'd already been married. And I'm like, if I'm diving in with this dude, like, I'm telling him everything, because I'm not going to settle. And I'm not going to change who I am and jump into a serious relationship / marriage with someone and then live my life not genuinely who I am. Like, so don't settle. Like, the right person. And I remember when I was single, because it was 7 years felt like a long time, and I dated and whatever, and like each one that just wouldn't work out, people would be like, the right person will come along. Don't worry, the right person. And it's so annoying to
Yeah.
hear, because you're like, what? You haven't been single for 7 years. Like, what do you mean when's the right person going to come along? Like it's almost offensive to a point.
Right.
But it's true.
Mm-hmm.
When you work on yourself, when you trust your gut, and when you don't settle for someone else's opinion of what you should be, the right person does come along and finds you and thinks, wow, this person's amazing.
Right.
Mike met me and was like, she is amazing.
I did. I did.
But like, they value who you are, and they
Right.
want you to live in the fullness of who you are.
Right.
And it will happen, but you have to stop making yourself small. You have to stop settling. You have to stop putting yourself in positions that aren't you, to attract someone that, like, if they really were the right person for you, they would want to know the real you.
Yeah.
They want the real you, not this perfect. I remember there were like the toxic guy. I would always make sure I looked perfect when I would see him. Like, everything was to the T. And I'm like, he had never seen me without makeup. And I'm like, there's something wrong with that. Like, Mike sees me like with my mouth guard in, looking a hot mess. Like, if I'm sick, smelling, just looking a mess. And like, that may not be his preferred version of me, but he still loves me.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, oh my goodness, is he going to like me if he sees me like this? Like,
Yeah.
those are all red flags.
Yeah. Big
You
time.
know?
Big time. It's funny. My last advice to myself would be attached to what you just said about like when you wanting to settle.
Mm-hmm.
When, after my first marriage, in between my first marriage and this marriage, people would want me to settle. So it wasn't me wanting to settle. It was like their advice would be like, what about this person? And they justify all of this person's flaws just because like they didn't want to see me single anymore. Right. So they were like kind of pleading for me to settle all the time. So what about this person? What about that person? Ooh, look at that person. And like, all of a sudden, like, nah, man, like that's not. So my advice to myself would be, all because they care doesn't mean they should coach.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people cared about me. They do care for me, but all because you care doesn't qualify you to be a coach in that moment. When you're getting advice from anyone, you want the advice to be objective or unconditional. Like they're not getting anything out of it kind of deal. And again, those people loved me, but they were in pain seeing me alone.
Yeah.
Right.
And like here, like, to the married people out there of single friends, just because two people are single doesn't mean that they should get together.
Hey, you're single and he's single.
Oh, that used to happen to me
You
all
guys
the
should-
time.
you guys
We would
should
be
get
out in a group.
together.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at him. He's single. I'm like, I'm not attracted to him at all.
Yeah,
but when
yeah.
you don't think much of yourself, you start looking and you're like, okay, well, he's not really like what I would typically find attractive, but I guess, like, you start making excuses and then you start settling for something that you don't want because the people around you. So stop telling two single people that they have to get together.
Right. But even outside of marriage, I would take advice of people who deeply cared for me. And it was the wrong advice because they cared for me too much. And it was conditional advice. It wasn't objective advice.
Yeah.
It wasn't advice out of wisdom, but more out of just their pure love for me.
Yeah.
Which is great. I need people to care for me. But I think the older I get, I want to take advice from people who are a little further down the road, of the journey that I want to go towards, right?
Yeah.
Like, towards the destination I want to actually get to, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to take advice from some people, like, I'm a pastor, so I'm not going to take advice from a person who's never been a pastor, has no idea what it is to be a pastor, has no idea with the weight that you have to carry as a pastor. I'm not going to take their advice. Like, I'm going to listen to people.
Yeah.
But I'd rather listen to someone who's been through the struggle, has the defeats, has the victories, has the experience, and doesn't get anything out of it, because then I know I'm going to get pure advice.
Yeah. And don't
from
take
that.
marriage advice from someone whose marriage is a hot mess.
Say that. Yeah. Right.
And it's funny as we talk through these things, and you might be listening and being like, reflecting upon like your single days, you might be single and be like, oh, didn't consider that. Or you might be married and thinking like, this does nothing for me. All these things can carry through into marriage. Like, just because from my takes, like, just because you're married doesn't mean that you stop working on yourself all of a sudden. Like, you continue. Successful marriages grow together.
Yes.
Each person continues working on themselves. They don't just say, well, you got me, I'm done, I give up now. Like, it's not a good look. You know, continue trusting your gut in your marriage. Like, I can always sense when something's off with Mike, and I'll say, yo, what's going on? And he usually, nothing. And then on the seventh time, then I get what's going on. But like, trust your gut in that sense. And other area.
Did your gut tell you that was going to happen?
It did not. Mike just spilled coffee all over himself. I'm almost done. Are you okay?
Yeah, wrap it up.
All right. And then
true real people.
But then also don't settle for a mediocre relationship.
Yeah.
You know, like, don't settle and say, I'm just going to spill
coffee
on myself.
Shut up. You spilled your tea
I
before
did. I
we
spilled my tea before we started. So see, we are growing together. We are both spilling our drinks.
Yes.
But no, like, it doesn't end once you have a ring on your finger.
Right.
It actually gets even more intense because then you're with this person 24/7. You're managing all of the hills and valleys and Grand Canyons of life, and you have to navigate those together. So if you're not growing together, if you're not working on yourself, if you're not trusting your gut, if you're settling for mediocrity, like, you're not going to have a successful, thriving, loving marriage.
No, you're not.
So they don't stop there. And like what you said, you know, pleasure over fulfillment, you know, I forget your other two already.
Yeah, it's like, you know, don't, because they care doesn't mean that's your coach. And
yeah, like all those things, like, they still apply. So don't just push off that this is just for single people. It's for everyone.
For everyone.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wrap us up.
All right, I'm going to wrap this up because last time Mike was a hot
So I
mess
could
with the
clean myself.
Yeah, he's covered in coffee. Also, you can watch us on YouTube at any time, full video. You can see Mike spill coffee on himself. Maybe that should be our reel this week, you just spilling coffee on yourself. Bloopers. But you also see that Mike decided that he wanted to dress exactly like me today.
Oh my God, that's not true.
I was dressed first, for the record. Marriage. But you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all your podcasts. You can check Mike spilling coffee on himself out on Instagram later today. He's at Mike Rosato. I'm at Jillian Rosato. TikTok at Mike Rosato, at Jillian.Rosato, or Jillian _Rosato. And we will be back next Wednesday.
Yes.
Too real. Have a wonderful Valentine's Day.
Peace.
Bye.